Well, and so ironically, the New Jersey PAC rules have been around probably for almost 2.5 years, and they've been trying to push it. They pulled it back and they tried to modify it, and they did a whole bunch of outreach, which was really disingenuous outreach because they didn't really change and they didn't listen to any of the rules. I mean, I was at the Kimmel County Chamber of Commerce meeting where they came down and presented this, and when they were speaking, they were showing copies of flood maps for our area that weren't even in effect anymore, and they just had misinformation that they're using to base the regulations on, and he didn't even really know, what we're dealing with down here along the shore. So they've tried to do it, but they realize that but I don't see it changing, and it's unfortunate.
This is in coordination with the county, though. I mean, this resolution.
This resolution, the county drafted. They
So
had
all municipalities.
They're encouraging all municipalities. I think Lower Township. I think it was in the Lower Township addressed this. I think at their council meeting last night. So the county is doing this coordinated effort. They're looking for all the municipalities to adopt this resolution, and then we're going to submit this as our official comment on, when the rules officially come out. But also they want to do a press conference with all the municipalities and kind of put them together to pass this up as a collective group also.
But Paul, just forgetting the uniqueness of Cape May for a second, what this proposal would essentially do is just take a off-the-shelf shore town, somebody that recently went through the rigmarole of raising a structure to base flood elevation, whatever it is in that town, and bringing it up to flood compliance. This rule goes in effect, and they're below the 5 foot of freeboard. They just went through that whole process, and they're immediately out of compliance. Right? I mean,
Well, then that goes into the discussion of substantial improvement in a cumulative 10-year period.
But that's what I mean. They'd be subject to that again.
Yes.
That first floor, so that, oh wait, we have a blowout or something goes on,
Yes.
then you're under this new rule. So
Now, what I would probably recommend that we do is, we did cumulative substantial improvement to get the extra CRS points. We have sufficient CRS points. I'd probably say is, if these rules go through, we should repeal the cumulative portion, so then it's only on a singular event. I mean, it's bad and good. I mean, the whole part of the cumulative is to try to get the structures that are in harm's way to eventually raise them. But if it's to the draconian effort of the detriment to a larger population, it's something that we may want to consider having to do, just for the benefit of the community-wide setup. But yeah, it would impact, and there are impacts and there's not impacts. So if if everybody's familiar with a lot of the housing stock, where if they have parking underneath the structure and the house is raised up, and there are 2 floors of habitable spaces above the garage space, those houses will probably comply with the 5 foot freeboard, because that's probably already 5 or 6 feet above the freeboard. However, that can change the characteristic of a community. You take a community like Cape May Point, West Cape May, Stone Harbor, even portions of Ocean City, where like Ocean City encourages, if you drive through Ocean City, a lower front part of the house where it's a little bit lower, and then they have the garage where it's elevated above in the back. So, it can change the characteristic of a community entirely. But there are some communities that, in the Seals, parts of Avalon, Stone Harbor, and the Wildwoods, that their housing stock is generally raised up, and they have parking underneath on the ground floor that's not habitable and 2 stories above, and there's, and if that's your housing stock, these rules, there's going to be impacts, but they're not going to be as character changing to your community. Whereas Cape May City, this would be character changing if we have to raise everything 5 feet. Now, do we have some flexibility in stretching our, because we're in a National Historic District, and would we be pushing the bounds of what we have? I think we possibly can, though it would be better if, because we have different regulations. We have a historic district, and even within the historic district, we have contributing structures and non-contributing structures, and then you have all the structures outside of the historic district. Obviously, if all the structures in the city were in the historic district, it would be easier, it'd have a better impact to purport the rules that says it would, if I have to raise a house 5 feet, it's going to disrupt the character in the neighborhood and disrupt our national historic standards. And I think I would have a case to say, you may have to comply with the flood rules, but maybe not the 5 foot of freeboard. And so we would have some flexibility, but that's a discussion that I think that we're going to have
Yes,
with
and
the
the
land use.
implications on that side of it, in particular in the Village Green neighborhood, are huge. Because now you are incorporating them into a historic district. Otherwise, those homes are, only maybe about 50 years old, but also they're attached dwellings, either through twins or quads. So that's a whole series of conversations that have to be had.
And don't forget, for Village Green, it's that 50% value is on the structure. So if you have a quad, I have 4 individual owners, it's not what one owner does as an improvement of 50% value. It's you share that 50% value. So you could have one owner on a quad totally renovate their place and get you at, say, 47%, and now the next person wants to do something small, and now the whole building may have to be raised 5 feet.
Quick question. So looking at the timeline on all of this, the public hearings are going to start, in another week?
Well, they haven't, they haven't, because they keep delaying this, they haven't ultimately released the rules officially in the New Jersey Register. We're still waiting to see them come out in a register, so that'll set the timeline. But we were feeling that the end of the comment period was going to be sometime in November, but Cape May County and the communities in the county, this is a strong thing that we were trying to be ready and prepare and proactive and really to help get support. So remember last meeting we talked about the Coastal Coalition and doing the MJPPI. We're going to share this information with our people in Atlantic County. I'm going to share this with the people I work with up in Monmouth and Ocean County, and and share this information and spread the word, so that, because it's not just a Cape May County issue.
Well, I question as to whether or not it's just a New Jersey issue. I think the federal level of the DEP, I can't believe that they would even allow something like this to happen.
There are those that hypothesize that FEMA is in support of this, because the next thing would be, because if to compound this, FEMA is in the process of revising the flood hazard maps, which are supposed to come out next year. So one could surprise that maybe they adjust their modeling, and is this another way to grab more people for flood insurance, for mandatory flood insurance, because they're hemorrhaging money and they can't afford their program?
It's crazy. It's totally unreasonable, and I can't imagine a federal agency deciding that we're going to use unreasonableness to grab more FEMA.
Well, they already.
I mean, I'm not saying that that's not the case.
I don't think with
Off the wall.
I don't think with the
Apply
current
logic.
federal administration is not going to be supportive of the cause.
I can't remember if this portion of it was taken out yet or not, but a few months back, maybe even a year ago, there was discussion on even, roads having to comply.
That roads and other public infrastructure would have to comply.
And just to follow up on that, we have roads that would have to be raised 5 feet.
And I got to.
I mean, just
Because-
think of what a road 5 feet higher in the air would.
But there's ways to get around that, because there's, you can do design exceptions based on surrounding conditions and all kinds of things. I haven't, you got to reread the regulations about 3 times to, and I've only read them once, so I haven't had a chance to really reread the public infrastructure.
It's over
Impacts.
1,000 pages.
Was it?
Over a
Yeah, just over 1,000, yeah. But that's, I haven't really, I was spending more time on looking at the residential impact, compared to the public infrastructure impact.
Okay. Well, I think as we get closer to these dates, we should have a full-scale, a presentation to the community of how this could affect them,
Most definitely.
Anything further, city manager?
No, that's all. I think
Okay.
I've
A
taken
quick
up.
question for the manager.
Mm-hmm.
With these dates that are in place, is there anything, we're putting forth this resolution, which is a good step, but is there anything else that we can be doing?
Every time, I would say talk to our local state legislators, but they're fully on board with us. They're supportive of us. They're at the mayor's roundtables, and I think they echo our concerns, but their voices, as I said, their voices aren't being heard at the state level, and that's why we need to spread this word beyond our state legislative district. This needs to be support with much more legislative districts than
Part of
our
this-
district.
Part of the frustration with this is an administrative agency with rulemaking authority. That's the process that we're in. So it's not like Senator Testa, how could you vote for this?
He
not
did.
voting
He's
on
not
it.
voting on it, right?
And none. And
That's what's so frustrating about this. So,
And unfortunately, we need help from this
And-
agency to accomplish some important projects in this town.
Yeah.
So
And
it's hard to.
And it's not just our local legislators
Adam.
didn't vote for it. No state legislator voted for it. Regardless of which party you may have been in or control. It's, as Chris said, this is just rulemaking policy by the DEP, by the agency.
City Solicitor, any updates this evening?
I don't have
This
anything to
afternoon, rather?
Let's not get that far.
Okay. City Council, any old business? Okay, let's move on to ordinances for introduction.
All right, so for this afternoon, we have 2 ordinances. The first is 540-2024, an ordinance amending Chapter 10 of the Cape May City Code regarding the Department of Emergency Management.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Solicitor, do you want to give us a quick explanation on this?
we own,
We're on
540, ordinance
oh,
540,
sure, this is.
emergency
um,
management.
This is just to confirm and clarify and update the flexibility that is built into the statute to provide that the OEM coordinator can reside within or without city limits so long as they're in proximity. So that the language that's in there is reflected in the statute authorizing this appointment.
Thank you. Any questions, council?
No.
Roll call, so I'm sorry, do I have a motion? Did we get a motion?
We have a
I'm sorry.
motion, yep.
Okay, roll call, please.
Councilmember Yeager,
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer,
Yes.
Councilmember McDade,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Baldwin,
Yes.
Mayor Mullick.
Yes.
All right, 541-2024, an ordinance amending Section 434 of the Cape May City Code to require trash cans be provided and maintained in connection with food service businesses providing for immediate consumption off premises.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
This ordinance actually came, frankly, from a lot of complaints to the mayor's office. We have made a request to several individual businesses, I'll be blunt, ice cream facilities. The DPW just cannot keep up with the amount of garbage directly in front of specifically takeaway restaurants and ice cream parlors, et cetera. So I get complaints of the smell of the trash, it's overflowing trash, the trash can is full of sugar and ants and pests and animals, which is all true, and we've all seen it. I can't call Frank at 9 PM to ask him to change a trash can. It's just not a legitimate way of doing business. To be blunt, if I'm a business owner, I would not operate that way. I'm a little bit surprised that we couldn't handle this outside of the legislative process. However, we're going to do it through the legislative process and have these establishments just simply provide for trash and recycling outside of their takeaway establishments. Takes a little pressure off of our DPW, but it certainly does not take away their work. They will still be maintaining the other trash cans on the promenade and on the mall. I just think it'll provide for a better, cleaner environment for everybody. I've walked up on the promenade and seen literally trash just flying around because it's overfilling the garbage cans. So I think it's a pretty simple solution to take care of a simple but annoying problem.
It's not a big ask.
No.
Should-
Housekeeping, exactly. With that, any questions or comments, council? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Yeager,
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer,
Yes.
Councilmember McDade,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Baldwin,
Yes.
Mayor Mullick.
Yes.
All right. Next up, we have public portion on resolutions only.
Anyone wishing to speak from the public in regards to resolutions on the agenda this evening, please come to the microphone, state your name and address. This is for resolutions this evening only.
Stacy Shan, 928 Columbia. I just have a quick question, just for clarification. 208, the non-voting members, they have, I know the council made this non-voting member for people that were residents of Cape May, well, not residents, they had a property in Cape May, but were actually the residents were like in Florida, so they were at two places. So I'm just clarifying that, do these people have to own property in Cape May? So they don't have to be anything associated with Cape May? Because I think before we made it where they had a property, but their residency was in Florida.
I don't believe that this resolution requires that, no.
So a non-voting member can be anybody from anywhere. They don't have to be associated with Cape May. They don't have to live in Cape May.
Are you on 208? Yeah.
208, yeah.
No, this
So-
resolution does not require residency
I know residency, but these people had
or
homes.
land ownership or otherwise. It does not require that within this resolution, no.
So-
And some, so David Shuffler, he's a city employee. So a lot of that is just to give some additional voices, technical expertise to the Environmental Commission.
And you know Angela, of course, is,
I was just asking for clarification. I wasn't questioning people on here.
Yeah,
I was just, and I don't know what David's expertise is in environmental.
Well,
And I
it's
believe-
more the coordination.
I don't know.
So
It's
if
more
I,
the coordination
if I can
efforts.
speak of that, the request came to the city manager's office, and not to get into a full personnel discussion on it, but he expressed an interest on being on the Environmental Commission. He does a lot with the Dune Day. He does some other environmental projects. And to be perfectly honest, in order to have a city employee, so for me to coordinate a lot of the efforts with Sustainable Jersey, the Green Team, and other issues, I think it just made logical sense to have an employee like David on there where that communication can be coordinated more effectively.
Okay.
So
Mike.
the members that are being appointed pursuant to this resolution are non-voting, they're called associate members in the city code. Now, Environmental Commission is statutory. There are voting members pursuant to statute. They have to satisfy the requirements under the statute for serving on that board. Associate members, because they don't vote, are there to participate, provide support, and they can bring whatever expertise or no expertise, and maybe they have an interest, because even HPC members don't necessarily have, some HPC members don't have to have expertise, but they have a demonstrated interest in the subject matter. So similarly, we have associate members that don't vote, that don't have to satisfy the voting requirements, and those are the ones that are being appointed by that resolution.
Okay. I guess everybody's losing my question. My question only was, do they have to live in Cape May or own property?
I
So
just
the
said
answer is
no.
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 Member-
Okay, so the answer is no.
The answer is no, they don't have to satisfy the statutory requirements.
Okay, but I'm not asking about the statutory requirement. I'm just
That's
asking
the-
about this.
Right, so the answer is no, they don't have to satisfy
Okay,
that.
so That was my question. Thank you.
Associate members.
My next question has to do with 211.
Can I just add
Yeah.
to that? I apologize to interrupt. Just for the public's knowledge on those non-voting members, it's Charlotte Todd, who
Started the Environmental
I think started the Environmental Commission many years ago. And as you pointed out, is simply because she's a non-resident, she lives in Florida, she cannot be a voting member. But we value her input and are happy that she's there. Angela Judge is Captain Judge, the commander of the training center, Cape May, the spouse of Captain Judge, and was on a planning board in her hometown and the Environmental Commission. And the third person is David Scheffler, who was just discussed as staff at the Recreation Department at Convention Hall, who just said he was very interested in being involved and would love to be involved. Nothing more, nothing
Right.
less, and is a non-voting member.
The only reason why I was bringing it up was because I thought when we passed this, the non-voting membership before, we said they had to be a taxpayer, but not a resident. And that's the only reason why I was asking for clarification.
Stacy, if I could clarify, we did change that probably about 3 years ago when I was on the Environmental Commission. Well, I don't know what the date is on that, but it was.
I was on the council when I think we changed it to that.
Correct.
But my recollection of it was that they had to be a taxpayer, but just not a resident. And that's the only reason why I was asking for
Yeah,
clarification.
okay.
My next question has to do with 211, has to do with the Civil Rights Grant for the AME Church restoration. And I think that, we all wanted the restoration of the church to reflect the church of its time. So I'm bringing up the question is, are the pews of the church going to go back into the church for part of the restoration?
Not at this time.
Okay, so we're restoring the church, but not really as a church, correct? Then,
Correct.
okay. My other question has to do with Resolution 213 for the payment of bills, and I just have a quick question. One of the payment was for around $27,000 to Flowbird, which seems to be a parking app, which I thought we were using.
It's for the kiosks.
The kiosks is on
Kiosks.
Flowbird?
The mall.
Okay,
Yes.
that was,
Yes.
great. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on resolutions this evening, this afternoon? Mr. Roush?
Afternoon, Jules Roush, 1010 New York Avenue. I'm going to comment again, or ask a couple of questions on number 211. I think it's great. I support the restoration of the AME Church, and I'd like to see it restored to as close to as possible the original intent of that building. And I see the range is 75,000 to 750,000. What is the intention of Cape May relative to the request that will be made, and for what purpose?
We're still evaluating the final grant application, but this was the first step to have that authorization to submit the grant. And once we have that final application, we'll present it to council and before it's submitted.
So we don't have a definitive plan as to what or how much?
Not for what we're applying for the grant at this point, no.
And you had just indicated when when Stacy was speaking, that the pews or benches are not to be part of the program.
At this time, no.
Could I ask why?
It's just not part of the adaptive reuse for the project that we're anticipating needing them.
Well, they're a historic part of the building. Just because they happen to be movable doesn't mean that they're not an important part of that building. And I would like to know why we have not just automatically.
We've talked about this at multiple council meetings now. Look, what's most important about that building is preserving the building and making sure that it doesn't fall to the ground. One of the first actions we did as a council in 2021 was buy that building to preserve it. The building needs to have some flexibility. We've heard from multiple people that they want it to be a community center. They want it to be a museum. They want it to be a theater. We can do all of those things, and that is the plan. but you can't have inflexibility in your seating. And a good theater has to have good seating. So that's simply the case. I'm not going to keep going further and further. I mean, we're restoring that building as closely and as beautifully as possible to the original, 100%.
Well, that's obviously not the case if you're not going to include what the parishioners use to sit on.
Well, that's your opinion, but I disagree with that.
Okay. Have all the grants been approved for the building itself as it now stands, as far as the grant applications for funding?
We've received, for the current phase, we've received a county grant for the restoration. That's the only additional grant, which I think we've reported before that we've received. The other grants that we've applied for, we have not received to this date.
Have they asked for additional information? I mean,
don't
that
think so.
application has been in the works for some time.
Yeah, and I don't think that we received funding under that round, and that's why we have to do a new resolution to apply in a different round of funding for that project.
Okay, thank you very much.
I just want to say on the AME Church, just quickly, it's a beautiful project that you may disagree with the seating of it, but you go outside right now and there's somebody working on it, laying the foundation to restore the bell tower. I think that's something that should be celebrated. You know, it took a lot of effort and time and commitment to restore something that was burned down. So right now you have local people who are working on rebuilding that. There's going to be not only the bell tower put back, but the original witch's hat that sat on top of it in a beautiful copper, or to be honest with you, it might be cedar shake. I think it is cedar shake, to match the cedar shake roof. But in any event, I mean, I think if you look at the detail that's gone into it already, the copper flashing over the windows being restored, the beautiful stained glass windows, everything's being done as historically accurate as possible. The entire exterior has been totally restored. Remember, on that building, actually, after the fire, it was all asbestos shingles. All of that is now removed, and all you have is the original clapboard. So it's being restored back to its original grandeur, which it wasn't. Even before the fire, it certainly wasn't original. So yes, there is going to be minor changes to make sure that it's a functional space, to make sure that it can be used for exercise classes, to be used as traveling, changing museum pieces and things like that. But that's important for the survival of that building. There's been a ton of research done on preservation for preservation's sake. It doesn't work. It has to be a usable space that people can use. So we have set up a partnership with Eastland Theater. They promise to be great caretakers of the building, just like Cape May Stage has been a wonderful caretaker of the Shackleton Theater next to Rotary Park. Just like the tennis club has been a wonderful partner in regards to their space. And the same way with Audubon and MAC and the Chamber of Commerce at the Welcome Center. All of those partnerships have been very successful, and I expect this one to be just as successful. So I thank you for the comment. And Jules, I hear you. We're not all going to agree on every little detail of it, but I do hope you see the value of the ultimate goal. Thank you. Any other comment on resolutions this evening? Okay, we'll close public comment.
All right.
To the consent agenda.
Moving on to the consent agenda, is there anything council wishes to remove from the consent agenda this afternoon?
Council, anything to remove?
Yeah, I'd like to remove 210-07-2024, please.
Okay.
Anything else, Council?
I'm going to be abstaining the June 5th meeting
Gotcha.
minutes.
Okay.
All right, anything else?
That's it.
All right, can we get a motion on the consent agenda?
Do I have a motion on the consent agenda?
I'll make the motion.
Taking out 210.
10.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Yeager,
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer,
Yes.
Councilmember McDade,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Baldwin,
Yes.
Mayor Mullick.
Yes.
All right, back to 21007, 2024. Resolution authorizing grant application and execution of a grant agreement with the State of New Jersey Department of Agriculture, Division of Plant Industry Spotted Lanternfly Program for the 2024 to 2026 Spotted Lanternfly Population Reduction Chemical Control Treatment Grant.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Questions or comments, council?
Yeah, I do have some questions. I did speak to Councilmember Yeager. He's on the Environmental Commission. This is something that, I don't know if anybody's seen these spotted lanternflies. They are just, there's so many this year. I just feel like there's something that needs to be done. Started doing a little bit more research. There's a tree called the Tree of Heaven that is not included on the invasive species.
Is it not? I
It's
didn't know
not,
that.
yeah.
It's
So
definitely invasive.
I'm thinking we might want to add that to that,
I think we should, and
or have,
while we were, if I may, Deputy Mayor, while we were examining the damage to the tower, I looked next to the condensers outside, and it's a weed, essentially. It does grow into a tree, but it grows everywhere, and it's in our condensers over there as well.
I'm actually looking at 395 and 395A3, Alanthus althysimian, it says Tree of Heaven in
Oh, good.
parentheses.
Okay.
So that is on there.
oh, okay,
Okay.
because 180, okay.
But look it up at home. If you have this in your property, remove it. It's basically a weed.
But-
It looks kind of tropical looking.
But I will caution, you just can't go cut it down. Because of the type of invasive, there's a process you have to do. You actually have to poison the tree
It's like bamboo.
and let it die. My daughter actually did it. She had about 5 of them, and we scraped the bark in 1 foot, like 3-inch bands, painted it with the type of poison, and let it go. And then you had to wait for it to die, because if you go and just cut it down, unless you dig up all the entire root system, the roots will just send up shoots even in more vigor. So you really have to, unless you remove it entirely, you really have to work with a tree specialist to make sure that it's removed properly. So I just don't want people to go out thinking, oh, I cut it down and I've
Right.
gotten rid of the problem. You've probably just exacerbated the problem, and it's going to come back with more vigor.
So, Mr. Dietrich, I would say that if we could at least post something on the city website saying either hire a professional, or if there is some type of a step-by-step process
There
for the
is.
homeowner, then
I can-
I would say put that there too, because some people would be.
we can work on that.
Engineering. and-
Because the city actually removed, there were 3 of them at the corner at the Welcome Center in Oyster Bay. If you recall, there were like 3 big trees there. They were actually Tree of Heaven, but Public Works actually dug and pulled the roots out so that we, before we did all the work there, to make sure that we removed all the roots effectively.
But the flies like that tree, is that?
That's,
Yes.
yeah.
It's from their homeland.
Tree.
Both
yeah.
both invasive?
It is.
Yes.
Just so you know, too, it's actually not a moth or a fly at this point. It's a bug. So it looks like a little beetle. It's black with white dots, or it's black and red with white dots, depending on the stage of development that it's in. But you can look it up online. But right now, they're not flying. They're not moths. They're like little beetle-looking objects. And I actually, while we're saying something, I do want to thank Mayor Carol Sabo for pointing out this grant that's available. And I know West Cape May is taking a lot of action. It's going to be an island-wide, cooperative to try to take care of this, really.
Mayor, if I
And
could
West
just-
Cape May has a lot more work than we do, really.
If you see the spotted lanternfly, stomp it.
Yeah.
That's
They
the-
jump.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so
They're-
get it and
Yeah.
jump with it.
All right, anything else, council? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Yeager,
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer,
Yes.
Councilmember McDade,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Baldwin, Mayor Mullick.
Yes.
All right, moving on to the regular agenda, we have 214-07-2024, resolution authorizing an emergency appropriation of funds for the emergency repair and replacement of city property and equipment damaged by lightning strike at City Hall.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any questions or comments, council? Roll call?
Councilmember Yeager,
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer,
Yes.
Councilmember McDade,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Baldwin, Mayor Mullick.
Yes.
All right, 215-07-2024, resolution authorizing the City of Cape May to enter into a cooperative pricing agreement with the Bergen County Cooperative Pricing System.
Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
I only have one question. Was there a reason that was this a
Yeah.
late addition? or
It was a late addition, and it was part of the emergency purchases of computers.
understood.
On
Got it.
Friday, when I was out trying to procure 20 computers so that we could have them for Monday morning.
Got it.
The pricing we got was under a cooperative. We weren't sure if we were part of the cooperative or not, but just to cover our bases, this resolution authorizes us to join the cooperative so that we could purchase that and other computer equipment.
Any other questions or comments, council? Roll call?
Councilmember Yeager,
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer,
Yes.
Councilmember McDade,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Baldwin, Mayor Mullick.
Yes.
All right, back to 216-07-2024, a resolution authorizing execution of temporary sublicense restoration agreement and amendment to settlement agreement with Jersey Central Power and Light Company, JCP&L.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
We saved the best for last, Mayor.
Yeah, I mean, this is really good news. I'll let the city solicitor give us a quick explanation on this resolution.
So this agreement is proposed with JCP&L, who we currently have a access agreement and various deed notices associated with the lots over in the area of St. John's and Lafayette, which is the Lafayette Street Park. I'm not going to rattle off the lot numbers because it's just going to confuse everybody, but the area that we're talking about is the area extending from St. John's to probably the second fence. There's the dog park, an open space, a fence, and then the area towards the Board of Education. And that area is Lot 54 and over on Board of Education. The left side, I guess I'll call it, if you're on Lafayette Street, extending to St. John's, that's the area that I'm talking about and that this agreement is referencing. And it's made up of lots that are owned by the city. Some of them are still owned by JCP&L, but subject to our ability, our being the city, ability to purchase that for $0 at the conclusion of this remediation process, including the execution and recording of deed notices, the last of which is the Cape May Housing Authority's resolution with JCP&L, which is currently finalizing an approval with HUD. The parties are working on that, which should lead to these properties being returned to city use. We're not at that stage yet, but because of the great progress that everybody was able to make to get to this point, there is light at the end of the tunnel of this process. Because of that, JCP&L is proposing temporary use until we get to that point when these properties are returned to city use. So this is that's one aspect of it, the sublicense agreement proposing to return temporary use to the city of these properties, subject to review and approval by JCP&L, because they're on the off chance that they may still need it, although everybody acknowledges that's unlikely. That's built into this agreement. So good news is the city will be returned use of these properties, subject to certain limitations for the protection of all parties. Second thing is, as part of the various agreements with JCP&L, they had to rip up park amenities years back for the restoration and remediation project. And as part of that, they could either rebuild those things or compensate the city for the loss of those, and the city can build what it wants. And of course, the city elected the second option, and the parties discussed and negotiated what was a fair compensation for restoration of those park elements. And in the city's case, in this case, it was based on the city engineer doing a cost estimate, and the parties arrived and agreed on the amount of $275,600, which will be a payment from JCP&L to the city of Cape May for purposes of restoring park amenities as part of the overall Lafayette Street Park project. So that's good news. We're restoring temporary access. We're confirming a restoration payment. There were some issues regarding delay of this process because of how long it's taken and the various hoops that everybody's had to jump through. And this also buttons up that issue as it relates to the city of Cape May and JCP&L. And the parties see the light at the end of the tunnel and buttons up the remaining issues because of, again, the progress that everybody has made to get to the point of getting HUD approval and hopefully returning this to park use. So that is the three main points of this agreement, hopefully in plain language, but that's what the agreement reflects. That's what the resolution reflects. And if council has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions, council? No, I just think it's great work. We all know how long this has taken to unscramble the bowl of spaghetti involving Lafayette Street Park. And I love giving all the acronyms, but every single one of these agencies have had a strong bite at the apple, and that's Green Acres, Blue Acres, EPA, DEP, HPC, SHPO, JCP&L, Cape May Housing Authority, Cape May Board of Education, Cape May County, Housing and Urban Development, which brings us to today, which is basically submitting our standard CAFRA permit for the park and open space board application. So with this agreement in place, we are really in a good place for the city, frankly, in perpetuity, but also in regards to going forward with the park, which we all know has been a long-term goal of the city, but a wonderful one. Yeah, and we did just make an application to county open space in regards to the nature trails. The nature trails, for those who remember the phasing, was phase 4. Now I guess it's going to be basically phase 2. But in any event, the nature trails are wonderful. It's over 2 miles of path. It goes through the park for some time. Then it goes around into the marshland behind the park. It's on an elevated platform, and it connects, of course, to the park itself and to the school. Of course, the school will have a strong security gate and things like that, and they will control the gate. But students will have the opportunity to go into their backyard and really learn about nature and experience the environment. Of course, as to will the citizens of Cape May, and we all know right now with the amount of traffic and things like that, it can be hard to find a place to walk other than the beach or the promenade. So this gives another location to really go outside, experience nature in a very safe environment as well, outside of traffic. So anyway, really, the open space application went really well. We don't have any news to report yet, but hopefully we will soon enough. And the great news about that is with the DEP approval in place, we'll be looking to bid this project relatively quickly to start this fall. So that will really be exciting stuff. Any other comments or questions, Council, on Resolution 216? Roll call?
Councilmember Yeager,
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer,
Yes.
Councilmember McDade,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Baldwin. Yes. Mayor Mullick.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, on to new business. City Solicitor, any new business?
I have something I wanted to just run by council, and Councilwoman Baldwin and I discussed this last night at our HPC meeting. But one thing that had come up as part of an HPC review was the city's standardized design standards. And we have some baseline kind of aesthetic standards in the zoning code that in this recent instance showed that, there may be some a conflict between the two. And the way that that presented itself was that, first of all, one of the standards is a minimum roof pitch requirement for buildings throughout town. So this is a requirement that applies throughout the city, no matter whether you're in or outside of the district. And that presented itself to the HPC in this context because we have, the city will see applications for additions. And one of the standards for the HPC is that you don't want to have this addition overwhelm the existing structure. You want to distinguish it in some way, but you also don't want it to become the mega structure and overtake, what was originally there. So the HPC, that's a really poor explanation. I'm sure an HPC member could do a better way of explaining that, but we have one here. But they're trying to strike a balance there. Now, in this case, they were trying to help an applicant accommodate an expansion, but they ran into actually this issue of the roof pitch and being able to accommodate the additional livable space to provide a better use for the applicant, but also not run into conflict with this design standard. So one of the things that came out of that discussion and what was the idea that, well, we routinely talk about roof pitch and design in the HPC context. We have specialized members with specialized knowledge, and one of the things that the city could consider is loosening up that minimum requirement and deferring, this type of discussion about whether the roof pitch is appropriate or minimum or maximum, whatever it is. Those properties that are within the historic district are going to have to go through that discussion anyway. They're going to have their design vetted for streetscape, and what it may do for applicants within the district is provide more flexibility to make a creative design or come up with a creative solution to a problem like that without running into, but we have this minimum general zoning code regulation about roof pitch, so what do we do about that? So, and that loosening up that provision would be consistent in my view, because that's precisely the type of thing that we have the HPC weigh in on. The design of the roof, the pitch of it, the view of it from the streetscape. So the idea, that's the background. The idea would just be to say, this minimum requirement for roof pitch and that type of thing, that doesn't need to apply in the historic district. We'll leave that determination to the historic HPC on a case-by-case basis through their application of their historic design standards. But leave that in place for the rest of town, so that there is at least a minimum requirement out there for those properties that don't go to the HPC. But if you're in the HPC, you could have the opportunity for additional flexibility on that.
Mr. Gillens, would it be for both contributing and non-contributing?
It would be for any property that falls within the
Okay.
district,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Chris, did they talk about whether or not it would be for the principal roof or a secondary roof? Because I think that was more the issue that they came up was the issues were more on the
secondary.
secondary roofs,
Yes.
not the primary roof. So, maybe that we can do some language where maybe there's not a, that relaxation is more for the secondary roofs as opposed to primary
Stick to
roofs.
additions or,
Yeah,
secondary
additions or,
structures.
Yeah.
the secondary, whether it's a porch roof or a shed addition or, something.
That's certainly how it presented itself
Right.
as like an issue to talk about. And, I can take that back to the HPC too to see,
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
but
Deputy Mayor.
Well,
go
the
ahead.
one example, that was brought up is some of these bungalows.
Yeah. Right.
They have a lower roof, and then you put an addition on the back, the streetscape totally changes, where
Yeah.
you see the
You see it popping up in the
peak of
back.
the roof in
Yeah,
the back.
right.
So
Yeah.
if they could be a little bit more
Yeah.
creative and come up with something
'Cause-
based on, the site and the.
The zoning officer, the
So
zoning
do-
officer, sorry, the zoning officer actually had to send 2 applications to the zoning board because of that, where the shed roof in the back, they wanted to preserve the window in the back, so the shed roof had to be lowered to preserve the integrity of the existing window. So that's part of where this started.
So that was on an existing.
That was on an existing
So
house.
I was going to ask, I mean, we just talked about additions or, an accessory. Does anyone envision that this would be a second roof pitch just on an expanded primary?
On an expansion,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, so it's not necessarily just for an addition? Or would you describe that as being an addition?
That would be an addition.
Okay, all right. I'm just trying to make sure it's clear.
Sure.
Yeah, the original proposal was just to loosen it up for the entire district and leave that determination to the board, because they will be reviewing that type of thing anyway. But certainly, if there was some desire or interest to limit it to specific cases, that could be something we could play with too. But the logic was, they're gonna, sometimes with the design of a building, you're gonna have 2 roof lines anyway, so that's why it seemed more simple to just loosen it up for the district as a whole.
Yeah. And Chris could draft something up for our next meeting if everybody's okay with that. Okay.
It seemed like something that was sort of somewhat straightforward that, to bring to council's attention.
Great.
The other thing is, I hesitate to bring this up, but there were some other proposals from the HPC laboratory that found their way to the planning board. And I know Councilman Yeager was there too. I'll just update council on that. They voted basically to table those for some indeterminate future date to revisit. One of them was, I think the HPC acknowledged, more problematic than the other in terms of the conflict between parking and maybe reducing off-street parking opportunities, and then the prioritization of the streetscape and, keeping those areas out of sight. So they went in with full knowledge that that was going to be there was going to be some tug of war on that issue. The other proposal was a little bit more, I guess I'll say vanilla, was the idea that we might have some standards in place for the storage of trailers and boats and campers and that type of thing. We already have regulations in place for on-street parking of those types of things. This was brought to my attention by one of our members who has significant experience in law enforcement, and he indicated that, it's the type of code provision, and I've seen this myself, it's the type of code provision you see throughout code books in the state of New Jersey and probably more. But just to have some sort of guiding principles for, hey, don't store these in the front yard, maybe put them somewhere else, and provide minimum requirements for that. So that was where that was coming from, and I didn't necessarily see it as a development regulation. It could fall under the police power. But I recommended we go ahead and send it to the planning board anyway, just to get some feedback, get another set of eyes on it.
I mean,
So-
it's definitely an issue, and it needs to be clarified, because from code enforcement's perspective, they've kind of been loosely interpreting that since it's like a motor vehicle, it's got to be parked in a approved driveway space. But the problem is, even in a driveway space, you don't want it to be in the front yard, even in a driveway. So I think we definitely need to get some tightening of that language.
I
to make
agree
it
with
more
that
clarified.
100%, but really all we were looking for was, I think we were better off, because everybody was saying, we're not sure where this is coming from. We didn't even know it was HPC. So the end of the story is that we're just looking for, I think, a good representative to come to the planning board and just explain the purpose.
And we
And to be clear.
So this is only for the historic district?
Actually, one of them, no, it was the entire.
Okay, that's what I want to
So
clarify.
both of those proposals
Were citywide.
were proposals for citywide initiatives,
All
but
right, good.
not in the sense of this is, this has to be done. It was more, and the discussion that led to that being presented was really more of, hey, this is really working for what we're seeing in the district, and it's something that we'd like to see. What do you think about a citywide proposal? That was really the context for it, but we discussed last night, Councilman Yeager, that it really would have been optimal to have somebody there to bounce that off and give that presentation, because I know Mr. King did his best to, as he does, to kind of explain the proposal, and everybody's a volunteer, and I get it, but really, it would have been nice to have, we all agreed it would have been nice to have somebody there to kind of give the background and the thought process behind it.
Definitely, yes.
So,
Yeah. Next time,
Next time.
come on.
But I think we do have
Send
to.
them along.
I would caution, because we have on one track where Amtrak is always looking for additional parking spaces and, trying to solve the parking issues of the city, to have a citywide curtailment of where we park on our individual properties. I think that's got to be a more global discussion that I think should be fully vetted by the planning board and its impact, throughout the city, not just, and I get the HPCs looking at it from a design perspective, an aesthetic standpoint, but we have to look at it, and I think the planning board would probably want to look at it from a more holistic, the impact of parking and how that would impact parking generally within the city.
And it's obviously all coming here anyhow.
right, and the logic of sending it there first was it would have to go there anyway, and to get that kind of, that feedback going first, so that we're not ping-ponging back and forth between the boards. I tried to kind of couple the delivery of that with that explanation, but I agree with you. I think when it's something like that, it's better to have somebody in person speaking into the microphone and
Yes.
talk about it.
Mayor, maybe we had that subcommittee, little subgroup before, where we had a representative from each of the boards kind of meet to discuss some of those other topics. Maybe that's a topic, or those are topics maybe that we could pull that subcommittee back together, that group together, and that you can have a representative from all the different boards to kind of tackle an issue like parking and those kinds of issues, and get a consensus out of that group before it's presented
So
fully
that
at
was
the
the
planning
one-
board or at one of the other boards or here at council.
That was the group that you had from, that ad hoc.
That ad hoc
right.
committee.
But I think zoning needs to be part of this conversation too. I mean, just,
Wasn't
yeah.
Steve Bond?
Yep, mm-hmm,
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. And
So
it was
we-
Bill and Steve and.
We had like a representative from each of the
PNC.
different
Is
boards.
everyone okay with that, if we get a representative from each board?
It's
Okay,
about the artificial turf.
take a look at it. Yeah.
When's our next master plan review? Is that coming up anytime soon?
No, I think, yeah, it's, we have
But
quite a while.
whatever comes out of this has to be, something we want to consider adding in the future.
Okay. Anything else, city solicitor?
That's it. Thank you.
City manager?
I just want to take the digital beach tags. I mean, generally, our beach tag sales have been pretty robust for the year, but they continue week by week. But one note I did want to note is we're seeing digital beach tags where it's daily and the credit card sales increase week by week. And, the issues both with our staff and the visitors, it's becoming an easier program. So, I do see improvement with that program, and the numbers that we see week by week are like, they're exponential, they're like a doubling or a large increase each week. So it's working, but I think it's always something we're working on, continuously improving it because it is a new program. But I just want to let council know that I think it's moving forward in a positive light.
That's great. Deputy City Clerk?
Yes, so mark your calendars, August 6th. The next meeting is a work session, and it's at 1 o'clock instead of 3 o'clock. That is National Night Out from 5:30 to 8:30, right in front of Convention Hall. So come on out, it's going to be a party, but the meeting will be at 1 that day, and that's all I have.
Anyone with grandkids and kids, it really is a fun event if you want to bring them out for that. Deputy Mayor, anything this afternoon?
No, I have nothing. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Councilmember McDade?
Just very briefly, had a conversation with the gentleman from the Jitney service. They said things are going great. They are seeing repeat customers. They're actually getting to know some of the people, so, asking them about their dining experience, et cetera. But they're doing about 250 plus on some of the, certainly from the Friday through Monday timeframe. So, and the app is working very well. They're getting a lot of positive feedback. So just
That's
wanted to
great.
report.
Councilmember Meyer,
I have nothing today, Mayor.
Councilmember Yeager.
Nothing new, thank you.
Okay, I just want to thank the county for the crosswalks that were put in on Madison Avenue. They did get the Continental keys, piano key style crosswalks painted this week, and that's great. I want to thank Open Space for hearing our application today. And just a quick shout out to our lifeguards. I received an email, and I'll read it really quickly, just a introduction. Then it says, a female lifeguard was placing the warning flag into the sand when she heard a whistle. She looked and saw two parents frantically waving and pointing into the water. Their two kids had been swept past the wave breaks, either in a rip current or just struggling and couldn't get in. It was too deep for them. You could see they were frantic, panicking, and starting to go underwater. The lifeguard sprinted as fast as she could, at the same time secured the rescue can on herself and went into the water. At the same time, a male lifeguard from the stand jumped down and did the same thing. They swam fast, got to the kids, brought them back to the beach, and reunited them with mom and dad. He went on after that, but just a wonderful example of the lifeguards doing their best to protect us. And I do want to mention the 4 guards that were involved, and that was one of 19 rescues that occurred that day. And that was Emma DeMario, Lindsay Farina, Cam Blevins, and Dustin Nugent. So I thank them all very much for the service on that one rescue, on the many, and it's just a reminder of just how important our lifeguards are to our community. So we thank you very much. With that, please.
And I want to expand on what you're
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah, sure.
The Beach Safety Committee just completed 3 videos on beach safety, getting into the water, which will be shown on the Movies on the Beach.
No, that's cool.
And it should be on our website.
They've been on social media.
Social
I've
media,
seen-
yeah.
I think I've seen all
They
3
were
of them.
really good.
But they were really
Yeah.
done well.
They're nice. They're good.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good.
Updating them. so.
Great job. Yeah, very cool. With that, we'll open it up for public comment. Anyone wishing to speak, please come to the microphone. State your name and address for the record.
Stacy Shan, 928 Columbia Avenue. This is just a quick comment. When the jitneys first started, they were running from like noontime to 10 o'clock at night, and they were getting a lot of people going to the beach. They were helping with the parking problem at the beach. Now jitneys don't start till 4, so I think we're losing that ability. We're only helping out the mall area. We're not helping out like the beach traffic that we have at the beaches, where we'd be taking people to the beach and bringing them home again. So I'm just bringing that up to maybe in the future we look at going back to maybe noontime to 10 o'clock at night so that we can help with the traffic flow for people going to the beach.
Thank you. Anyone else this afternoon? Mr. Roush?
Jules Rouse, 1010 New York Avenue. A couple of items. The mats that are on the beach, are they permanently installed?
No,
So they come up at the end of the season?
they can come up at the end of the season.
Bike safety lights and helmets. And I know, Chief, you guys are working at that. But it scares the daylights out of me at night when these bikes and the scooters have no identification at all. It's, I don't know what the solution is, but it's
The Kiwanis
it's
Club
an
has,
accident waiting to happen.
the Kiwanis Club has really done a nice job giving out lights. I don't know if you can go to the Kiwanis Club and get a light, but I know they will be at the at National Night Out giving out free lights. A little far away from today. That's on August 6th, but and I know that's not a solution that you're looking for, Jules, but we share in your.
I don't know that there is a solution
Yeah.
other than the habits of the parents saying to the kids, and really, frankly, it's the parents are as guilty as the kids.
Sure.
It's an issue, and I don't know how you're going to solve it. We have another safety issue in my view, at Delaney's and the Finn's Restaurant, they have parking, or I mean, they have tables and chairs on their side facing the streets. We have a 5-foot safety zone that is required to be open and free for the people walking as pedestrians, so they have the access of safety. I watched a lady with a stroller not being able to move safely in the sidewalk. She put it out on the street. On those streets do not have the width to accommodate the safety of an individual with a stroller or. And I know we have a requirement of 5 feet of safety zone. In my view, and I've looked at it on several occasions, neither one of those facilities have a 5-foot safety zone. They have umbrellas and tables and chairs that are inside of that 5-foot safety zone. And, with the amount of people we have coming to town, a lot of visitors that have never been here before, I think we, from a safety standpoint, need to look at that restriction and decide how we're going to address it, either enforce it or get rid of it. I think the city has, frankly, a liability if they do not enforce it, and because it's been there all season, and I point that out. We've had recently two emergency notices, and what's the procedure for declaring a state of emergency? I assume there's a requirement that it follow a specific set of rules.
Coordination with the OEM director and mayor, and the declaration's declared through the OEM director.
Who actually issues the declaration?
I believe the OEM coordinator.
Generally, in my previous experience, having gone through disaster training and command center operations, there's a protocol. And the OEM coordinator is generally the person who is tasked as part of the chain of command to determine if there is an emergency, and then the notification process and to follow whether or not command center operations need to be set up based on the type of incident it is, et cetera. So it's pretty prescriptive, to be
Well, yeah,
honest.
it's a very, very
Jules,
important function.
can I just ask you a question? You said 2 states of emergency. I wasn't sure what you meant. You're talking about
We
the
had the
bombs?
one on the beach.
I'm sorry?
There was one on the beach not too long ago.
Was there one on the beach?
Well, we had the.
What happened, Jules, just so we remember?
I
you
thought there
know?
was another lightning strike.
Well, we closed the beaches
Yeah.
when the lightning was, but that wasn't a state of emergency.
That was not a state of emergency?
Just closed the beach.
They close the beaches routinely for lightning.
Okay.
Yeah,
The area.
that was
That's
just
not-
So
closing the
that's
beach.
not an OEM,
No, that's a lifeguard.
Okay.
Lifeguard directs that, and they watch and monitor weather and, reports, and then they'll close the beach at their discretion based on the weather reports that they receive.
okay.
And Jules, that is in coordination with our OEM team, and Chief Fashel could probably speak more, but basically the OEM team under Deputy Fire Chief Eck is communicating out with various departments and reporting back to him. So if there's a lightning strike, the first person that's going to see that is obviously Beach Patrol. So Beach Patrol is going to communicate that back to OEM, who's going to now push the Nixle alert, which is going to alert the entire community. But there's a specific procedure on that, and state of emergencies are totally separate, I think, than what we're talking about here, and that really generally goes back to the form of government that we're in. So the OEM coordinator would be the one that would declare that in consultation with the city manager.
Thank you.
And Jules, just so I'm clear, the second thing you were talking about was the bomb scare?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to understand.
The ordinance 541, the trash, there's no mention about the beach concessions. And because we're seeing more, at least I have witnessed more and more food being delivered to the beach. And most of it is coming out of the hotels and motels going to their customers that are ordering from the beach. Are they, I don't know the answer to this, but are they responsible to take care of the trash that they generate?
Mr.
on that
Solicitor,
activity?
would you consider them responsible under this ordinance?
There might be something in their agreements that speaks to that.
But they are a takeout. It's takeout food. So why wouldn't it be including them?
This ordinance would surely cover them, but I agree with Chris.
Yeah, I'm not saying they don't. I'm saying there might be something even more specific in their agreements. But yeah, it's to go for immediate consumption off premises.
I would assume that specifically is to-go food, so I would assume it would cover them as well.
I would too, but
Yeah.
I think there's maybe a little clarification that it include the beach concessionaires. Well, certainly, that's
Food
consumption
to the
next
beach, served to the beach.
I think
Mr.
this-
Solicitor, do you think it needs to be more specific?
No, I think we can acknowledge that if that's the type of service that is being provided on the beach, that fits what we're talking about in this language here.
Provide notification.
Yeah, I think it's a good activity. I'm not
Yeah, sure.
disagreeing with the opportunity to call someone and have food delivered to the beach. I think that's great, but I think there also should be some responsibility for the cleanup. I mean, I've watched the Public Works guys collect the trash around 6:30 or 7 o'clock at night at the beach entrances, and I'll tell you what, it would take a lot of money to have me go and do that job. It is nasty, nasty work. And those guys that do that, they do a tremendous job. And I'm sure it's a thankless job.
Yeah.
One other issue, and I hate to bring up again,
But can I want to make sure we have an answer to that. I assume that it's under this,
I
but
mean, the city reserves the right to time to adopt and promulgate reasonable rules and regulations applicable to the concession area, including without limitation, operator hours, manner of operation, and to amend such rules and regulations. So I think under that condition, right, under
As
K,
suspected, on page 11 of these agreements, it says concession operator must supply a sufficient number
Yeah,
of
right.
garbage and recycling containers to
Okay,
maintain sanity.
okay, good.
So that's what I
It's-
mean.
We're covered.
It's already addressed in there. If
Yeah.
it weren't, this would cover it too, but there's something more specific in their agreements anyway.
okay,
great.
good, okay.
The only other item, and I'd like to go back to the AME Church. I absolutely agree that that is a very worthwhile project to be a historic, restored, and available for the community. But I've been a bit disturbed, as I've indicated previously, that, to my knowledge, that grant has not been approved as yet. We awarded a $1 million contract just recently, and I know there's work being done now. Since we issued the contract for the work to be done without the grant being approved, we're now using city funds to pay for that.
But
Yet council has,
That's true, that you're absolutely correct. But we have applied for multiple grants for this phase. Some were rejected, some were accepted, and so we had exhausted our grant application for that. And once we did that, we bid it out and went with the lowest bid, and of course, went through the whole process up here. This is an application for the state park, Park Service, right?
but that-
National Park Service. So,
but
this
that's not
would
part of
be-
the construction.
no,
Under-
so what we've bid out is bid out and being done.
Yeah,
But
but that's
there-
being done under our money, the taxpayers' fund.
Correct,
As
100
opposed to a grant money.
Not 100%, because there are county open space grants included in the work that's being done. But you are correct in saying that taxpayer funds are being used to do it, yes. This is another grant application that could perhaps be used on the interior of the church. And if we get the grant, then great. If we don't, we don't.
Okay, I just wanted to make it clear that we're not using all grant money to restore that building. We are using some taxpayers' money, which hasn't been defined
We-
for city council.
even the initial phase where we when we secured the outside of the building, did the windows and the roof and the siding, that was not all grant money, that was city
That was-
funds
I know
to
that
do
was
that.
that, but it was approved that way.
And so was the second phase approved that way. When the contract for award for that money, the certification of funds stated where the funds for that project were to go, and it was for, that was funded by city funds and county bond funds.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, and you do recognize we went out to bond for this through the normal bonding process specifically for the AME Church.
I understand that.
And you spoke at that time. I mean,
Yes, I did.
I don't want you to walk away saying that we didn't say that there wasn't taxpayer funds. There are taxpayer funds, and we haven't said that there wouldn't be. I mean, we've attempted to get as many grants as possible, 100%, but taxpayer funds are being used to restore the church, 100%.
Thank you.
The city's also reserved public use specifically in that lease agreement. so
Right.
that there's going to be some public use
Yes.
connected with that lease agreement.
I wasn't going to raise that issue, but where does the lease, other than being in force, there's no activity from the tenant that I'm aware of?
Not at this point, it's
Well,
not.
It's not really,
Biddable for-
the building doesn't have a certificate of occupancy to even occupy the
I
building.
understand
So-
that, too.
So until that happens, they can't really take possession of the lease to that extent.
And just, for the information of those listening, we approved a $1 million bond, is that right? We approved a $997,000 contract with the contractor. And through that $997,000, I believe close to $300,000 of which is being paid for through county open space funds. Out of that $997,000 contract, we have basically the entire building, HVAC, the tower, the bathrooms, basically the entire shell of the building, insulation, electric, drywall, plumbing, is all completed. So for that $997,000, basically we have a complete building. Now, what Eastland Theater does to convert it into a theater or whatever they want to do is on them financially. So that's what they're obligated to do that. But my point in saying that, Jules, is I think we're getting a really nice building for $997,000, less the $300,000 from county open space funds. Thank you. All right, any other public comment? Okay, motion to adjourn? Thank you, everybody. Have a great evening. The time is now 5:01.